Imagine two people sitting in front of closed laptops. The first slept badly and has read the same sentence 4 times. The second has energy, but work on the presentation is still a foggy instruction with no visible first move. From across the room, they look identical. Neither has started. We may call both of them lazy, then offer both the same advice. Use more discipline. That advice might work. It is also working with very little information. Laziness is often the name we give the behavior before we know what is producing it. Not starting, delaying, stopping, and deliberately resting can look similar while being different problems. Even procrastination is narrower than simply not doing something. It usually means a delay we expect will make things worse. So this is not a clinical classification, and these are not 10 scientifically established types of person. They are 10 practical possibilities, better questions to test before turning one visible behavior into a verdict about character. The first 3 questions concern capacity. What is available before the task even enters the room? 1. Not enough usable energy. Low energy is broad. It may mean sleepiness, physical or mental fatigue, or ordinary variation. We cannot identify the cause by watching someone fail to answer an email. A 2024 review found that even one night of restricted sleep increased sleepiness and, on average, made it harder to stay focused over time. But in some areas of thinking it measured, the review could not clearly tell whether sleep restriction made a difference. The modest point is that apply more effort may be a poor response when the available equipment is running in low power mode. A useful question is this task difficult today? Or does almost everything feel unusually effortful? 2. Pain or illness is using part of the budget. A person can look inactive while doing invisible work, tolerating pain, managing symptoms, or compensating for interrupted sleep. Studies of chronic pain suggest average differences in some mental skills used to guide attention and action, but the research has limitations. Pain, illness, medication, sleep, and mental health are not interchangeable. The safe conclusion is not, this behavior proves a condition. It is that visible output tells us very little about the cost of producing it. If fatigue, pain, sleep problems, low mood, or difficulty functioning are persistent or concerning, a productivity framework is not a substitute for professional assessment. 3. Recovery, not avoidance. Rest is not always the answer, but it remains a strangely underfunded hypothesis. Studies link mentally switching off from work with less fatigue and exhaustion and with better well-being. Most of this research shows associations, so it cannot inspect your Sunday afternoon, tell us what caused what, and declare the sofa medically necessary. Rest and avoidance can also coexist. The difference is not visible from the sofa. A better question is whether the pause is restoring capacity, merely postponing discomfort, or doing a little of both. Sometimes the person has capacity, but the task has been badly shaped. 4. The next action is unclear. Finish the report is an outcome wearing a task-shaped hat. It may conceal finding the numbers, making a chart, explaining the dip, and sending a draft. A review of a combined planning method, picture the goal and obstacle, then make a specific if-then plan, found a modest average improvement in reaching goals. That does not prove ambiguity caused your delay. It makes clarity a cheap hypothesis to test. Replace the project name with one observable move. Open last month's report and copy the 3 headings. If the task becomes easier to enter, perhaps the door simply had no handle. 5. The activation cost is high. I use activation cost as a practical model, not a technical term. It means the work before the useful work, finding the file, signing in, choosing a method, switching contexts, and tolerating the awkward first 5 minutes. In controlled experiments, people perform a little worse immediately after switching tasks. Everyday projects are more complicated, but the design question is useful. How much setup stands between you and progress? If the action is clear but the runway is absurdly long, reduce it. Leave the document open. Gather materials once. Separate setup from execution. This does not remove effort. It makes the effort visible. 6. The total field feels too large. One unclear step is a clarity problem. 40 visible steps can become overwhelm, the sense that demand exceeds the capacity available to organize it. Acute stress can make it harder, on average, to hold information in mind and adapt when things change. Stress created in a laboratory is not the same as the everyday feeling we call overwhelm. This is a model to test, not a diagnosis. When the whole project is shouting, "Pick a task," may require too much sorting. Hide most of the field. Choose one section, 10 minutes, or one decision. Stop negotiating with every part simultaneously. Sometimes the task is clear and physically possible, but approaching it feels expensive in a different way. 7. The task feels threatening or aversive. The email might begin a conflict. The application might invite rejection. The bank balance might contain information you would prefer to receive in a small envelope marked "Later." How unpleasant a task feels is associated with procrastination, but fear does not explain every delay. Instead of asking, "Why can't I just do it?" ask, "What unpleasant experience might starting expose me to?" Naming the discomfort does not remove responsibility. It gives responsibility a more accurate target. 8. Mistakes feel too expensive. Studies distinguish high standards from concern about mistakes, criticism, evaluation, or never being good enough. Those patterns have different relationships with procrastination. Perfectionists procrastinate hides the important part. The obstacle may not be wanting to do excellent work. It may be an impossibly narrow definition of acceptable work. Define what a rough version is allowed to be, not "make it bad on purpose," advice beloved mainly by people who are not submitting it. Just give the first version a smaller job than the final one. The last two questions concern what the task asks you to care about and decide. 9. The task has low value, ownership, or meaning. Motivation is not a volume control. Workplace research finds links among having some choice, having basic psychological needs met, motivation, and useful outcomes. But it cannot explain one person's spreadsheet avoidance. Still, why does this matter and to whom is a legitimate question. Some tasks connect clearly to a result you value. Others arrive as administrative weather. A low-value task may still be necessary. Precision does not cancel taxes. But you might connect it to a chosen outcome, negotiate it, automate part, or do it plainly without demanding passion. 10. There are too many unresolved decisions inside it. This is often called decision fatigue, but the story that each choice drains finite willpower is not settled science. Definitions vary, studies often measure it indirectly, and more options do not reliably create overload. We do not need that larger claim to notice a task design problem. Plan the trip may secretly mean choose dates, budget, route, hotel, transport, and which reviewer's opinion counts as legally binding. Externalize the choices, decide the order, reuse low-stakes defaults. The claim is not that decisions consume mysterious fuel. A task with 12 unresolved branches simply contains more work than its label admits. These 10 possibilities overlap. Pain can reduce energy. Ambiguity can raise activation cost. Concern about mistakes can make an ordinary task feel threatening. Rest can contain a little avoidance, and avoidance can happen while you genuinely need rest. This is why the categories are questions, not boxes. Sometimes the answer will still be, "This matters, I can do it, and I have been choosing not to." Compassion does not erase agency. In several short experiments, a compassionate response did not remove motivation to improve. It does not guarantee action. The point is not to win an argument that laziness never exists. The point is to stop using one moral label as if it were an explanation, a mechanism, and a plan. Return to the two closed laptops. One person may need sleep. The other may need a first step. A third may need to send an uncomfortable email. A fourth may need to close the laptop deliberately and recover. The visible behavior cannot tell you which response fits. So, before prescribing more discipline or more rest, replace "Why am I so lazy?" with one more precise question. What is making this action difficult today? If one distinction gave you a more useful question, keep that one. You do not need all 10.